Hello people, how are you doing? I'm doing pretty good. It's getting a little warmer outside here in downtown Toronto. Hope it's getting warmer and just generally nicer wherever you are. Today we are going to be talking about the Spider Within, part of the Spider-Verse franchise in Sony, and it is about mental health battles. Miles Morales is dealing with some pressure, some anxiety. We're going to talk about all of that coming up, but please, before you do that, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to this channel for more content just like this. Now, just before we get into it, this is a reaction video, but I'm not going to be watching this all the way through step by step necessarily. I'm going to be showing clips, talking about the video, the context of it, the backstory of it, and all the things involved. But just for copyright purposes, you're not going to be watching it all the way through with me, so just so this video doesn't get taken down or anything. So I found out about this a couple days ago, a little bit over a week ago now, and I was pretty excited to see some more Spider-Verse franchise stories, and this one definitely was very good, very interesting. I liked a lot of it. I thought there was a lot of thoughtfulness in it, and I'm excited for more of what's to come, but let's get into the backstory of how this all even happened. This story takes place between Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, just in case you were unsure. So I heard about this story about a week ago, got really excited that I was about to see more Spider-Verse content because it is definitely my favorite franchise right now. So this is part of Sony's Lens program, which is to get people who have some background in animation but are marginalized a chance to do more animated films, so more animated shorts, particularly I guess in this case starting with the Spider-Verse franchise. This is also part of a fundraiser for the Kevin Love Foundation, started by current NBA player and NBA champion Kevin Love. The fundraiser is called The Hero Within and is specifically focused on mental health in youth and encourages young people to speak up about the internal battles that they face. So knowing that going in, I was pretty excited about this. I always love and appreciate the talking about mental health, the awareness about it, all the differences that come within it, as well as getting more sensitive to it, more inclined to it, and just generally listening to it more and understanding the different facets of mental health and its issues that come with it and the people that are affected by it, which is realistically all of us, is something that really is very important to me and something that I was really excited that they were going to be talking about because I really do trust these storytellers. I also do want to say this right at the top. This video is about mental health, this short is about mental health, and so what I want to say right off the bat is that I am not a therapist. I do have some experience in this. I have researched some of this. I am not fully researched. I do not know everything. I do not know your issues. So this is not by any means a like do this or do that and you will fix your mental health issues, or do this and you can help everybody around you. No, I am trying to assess a piece of media and using my knowledge as best as I can, but I'm in no way, shape, or form suggesting any sort of medical attention or anything like that. So with all the backstory out of the way, let's talk about The Spider Within. The short starts off with Miles panting. Miles is dealing with the many burdens of his life. The pressure to save everyone, his mission, and put himself on the line as Spider-Man, while also dealing with the pressures and expectations of his parents, his social life, his school. Miles comes into his home with a horror movie playing and his dad scares him and tells him to, quote, always keep your head on a swivel. And you can see Miles is dealing with a lot of anxiety. The fact that his dad managed to sneak up on him and he's taking deep breaths, just trying to calm himself down. He's clearly dealing with a lot. Jefferson invites Miles to watch the movie with him, but he says he feels too tired. His dad senses something's wrong and asks if he's okay, but Miles of course says, yeah, everything's fine, as most people do. Miles goes into his room, slams the door a little hard, and his dad gets on him again for slamming his door so hard. And we see a lot of this with Jefferson and Miles. The relationship always seems to be Jefferson trying to instill a lot of values in him, being really tough, and Miles just kind of trying to avoid him because he can't really seem to communicate with him, or he feels that he can't. In general, his parents' relationship with him seems to be always harping on him, and in fairness to them, they don't always know what's going on. They don't know the full story of him, but in general, I think what this is used to represent is anybody going through anything. We never fully know anybody's full story, and I think it's always important to, obviously we're all human, and if we don't know things, we can't give the full context of things, we can't assess things properly, but at the end of the day, We're not always privy to these things. We don't always, deserve to know everything. People can keep things quiet and not tell you everything that's going on. And obviously their relationship with Miles has established certain things in Miles' mind and in their relationship generally, that he doesn't feel that he can say things all the time. He doesn't feel maybe heard as often as he would like to. What you can see is that Miles is feeling burnt out and the anxiety is starting to get to him. He lies down on his bed to try and calm down, and he starts to see a shadowy figure of himself and suddenly falls through his bed into a subway. His first instinct is to try and punch the shadowy figure, but it does nothing. And then the shadow keeps morphing and changing, first into a giant spider and then multiple spiders. Finally, Miles wakes up, calms down from this panic attack, and starts to walk out of his room. He goes outside and asks his dad to talk, and his dad happily takes him outside and listens to him. The talking points of mental health are actually not really completely exclusive to the Spider-Verse, even though they have talked about it not just in this short, but also both movies a little bit. Cody Ziegler has also talked about that in his run with Miles, and I've talked about that as well in my last video, so I'm just going to give a shout out to myself. Check that video up right there, and you will see a lot more exploration into mental health issues, especially with youth. So there's a good amount to talk about here. Obviously, I think, I'll speak from my perspective and, learning about mental health, both from different perspectives and my own personal battles with it, is talking to someone is not always easy, whether it's a professional or a family member or a loved one, generally your friends. You don't really know who you can confide in. In this case, Miles and his parents have a relationship, as I said, where they're pretty difficult with him. They're very hard on him. They have a lot of high expectations for him, and he has to deal with that because he also obviously has these own expectations for himself. He wants to be successful. He wants to do good. He wants to feel impactful and important. He wants to help everyone around him. That's a lot of pressure for someone who hasn't even been on this earth for like 2 decades. And while his parents are definitely more ideal, I think, than most parents in reality, unfortunately, we saw in the last movie that his parents were actually willing to accept that maybe they had poor perspectives on things. And the fact that Jefferson is sort of like a very tender dad, despite being so hard and stuff, having that sort of facade of like, that stoic man sort of thing. He's actually a big softie, if we're just being honest about it. So it seems like Miles could talk to him, but it's always easier said than done, right? Especially when the person you think you can or need to rely on is the one that's being probably the hardest on you, which would be his dad. I think a lot of people can sympathize with this. You can understand why it'd be difficult to talk to your parents, especially the ones that are very difficult on you. But you also at the same time want to receive that love from them. You want to receive that care, and you know that they do care. You just feel like there's sort of a gap. Our generations as millennials and Gen Z are often being told that we need to shut up, that, we need to stop crying, this generation's soft and it's weak and everything else. In my opinion, I think what we're seeing is actually a lot more awareness. I think our generation is very aware of the issues of mental health that previous generations have not been so aware about and so well equipped for. And I also just think generally, it's kind of a flawed logic, right? If people have issues and we listen to them and want to improve society from there, the idea too that people are just weak for being in touch with their emotions, I think is also probably one of the most flawed things I've ever heard. I think the more emotional intelligence and emotional maturity comes from being in touch with your emotions and understanding them and being able to talk about them. And it often does start at a very young age when it comes to mental health issues. So when you address those things early, that's super important. I think that's what this film and the Kevin Love Foundation is trying to address specifically in this case. Mental health issues can lead to, for lack of a better word, and due to censorship issues, unaliving. It's a bleak but real reality. Specifically with boys and men or anybody assigned male at birth, we are always expected to be stoic. We are not expected to show pain, show hurt. In general, in society, we are not supposed to not be okay. We always have to be okay. We always have to just tough it out and roll with the punches. And that is, as I said earlier, something that the older generation generally thinks. We always have to roll with the punches. And that's not to say that you shouldn't. It's not to say that you don't have to gut things out sometimes. It's not to say that some mental fortitude is important. It absolutely is. But I think the point is that we want to progress. We want to change things for the better. And I think a movie like this, while that's not the intention to change everything all at once, is small important steps. Using a character that has become so popular like Miles Morales is a really good important step to show his vulnerability. It's sort of a reflection of how we really tend to not see that in day-to-day life. And by the way, I know I did just focus on anybody assigned male at birth. People assigned female at birth too, any women and girls, definitely do face this. And by the way, I'm gonna just say this right away, right now. No matter what it is you're facing, there is no reason to compare mental health issues. Just because someone is, you know, in a more dangerous potential mental headspace doesn't make the other person's issues lesser. Your issues are always important. Having said that, again, it is just never that simple, unfortunately. We are still not yet in a place where, you know, everyone is so understanding. And in fairness to everybody too, as someone who, you know, I really like to lend a hand, I always want to listen, I always want to help personally, I do realize that there's some, I guess, sort of come to earth moment where you gotta realize that you can't help everybody. I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not fully equipped. And you can't help everybody, even if you want to. Unfortunately though, there are a lot of people that just straight up don't want to, and they don't want to see the humanity in a person and want to actually reach out and help. Now I do want to say, as I've said through this whole thing, there are differences that everybody deals with in mental health. Again, not lesser, but there are differences. There are differences between how a white person per se might have some mental health battles and issues versus a black person or a black boy like Miles represents. And as a person who is not black, I do not feel comfortable or really have any place to talk about that. There are people who are much better at that, and so I will leave that to them. But I do want to just say that that is definitely part of this short and generally part of the bigger conversation at large. Again, no one is more or lesser with these sorts of things, really important to keep in mind, but I do think that's important to address because I do feel that that was definitely part of this video in as short as it was. I think trying to end this on a more positive note, while I don't think that this short changes the world, I do not think that is the intention of this. I think it's a small little step that helps the conversation generally, and I think that's good. I think that's important. I don't think it needs to be anything bigger than what it is. I also think that what I will say about this is it seems like we are going to start to get more projects, probably within the Spider-Verse genre or franchise, and that really excites me. So with that, I will say take care. I'll see you guys in the next one.